Welcome. I'm excited to sit here with three wonderful women, three wonderful Warren alum who graduated in 2014. And they are currently, they've started a film production company, Room 19 Productions. And I just wanted to sit with them and talk a little bit about where they've been, what they're doing, and what they have to offer to you, the student filmmakers watching this. So let's start with Julia. Can you tell us a little bit about just your training and how you got to where you are right now?
Yeah, so my name is Julia Relova. I went to Davidson College in North Carolina and got my bachelor's degree in psychology. In that degree, I studied clinical psychology, business psychology, all different kinds of psychology. And I took that to my first job, my career was straight into events. So I did events for a nonprofit and then continued to do events for a tech company as well in their onboarding system. And now I've completely pivoted into freelancing into film along with Jamie and Imani, but also on my own terms with other people I've met in Chicago as a program manager, project manager, and different various aspects.
Awesome. Thanks, Julia. Amani, what about you?
Yeah, hello, I'm Imani. I did my undergrad at Ohio State University, where I studied film studies and I had a concentration in screenwriting. And after school, dabbled in a lot of things, writing, producing, film programming, and which is kind of like our film curation. And then ended up with an opportunity to pursue film programming full time. So that's what I do now. I live in LA currently, and I work for the American Cinematheque, which is a film nonprofit organization here in LA, where we have three theaters here and we showcase all kinds of films and such. Um, and yeah, I work here and live in LA, as I said.
Awesome. Thanks, Amani. Jamie, what are you doing?
Hello. Yes, I'm Jamie. So I did my undergrad at Illinois Wesleyan University. And I majored in theater arts and English writing. So I think that experience definitely like prepared me a lot to like be on set in the film world. But post grad, I did a lot of theater first, so I kind of found myself in the storefront theater scene, freelancing there, and obviously picked up the gig at Warren that I do every year. So I serve as the technical director, and then the short film producer. So that's kind of a consistent gig of mine, but other than that, I do events, stuff like that. Expo Chicago is another event I'll return to every year. So a couple consistent gigs, but yeah, I've been freelancing since graduation, really.
Awesome. So Room 19 Productions is your film production company. How did that get started? What was who had the idea, or was it all together, or where did it come from? Julia raises her hand. It was you.
I had the dream. There was one day when me and Jamie and Imani were just like on a Zoom call and we had just gotten off the phone with a bunch of other friends who are creatives through a collective that Jamie and some of her college friends had initiated called Hotel Collective. And I had just been stewing over it for a while. And for me, the pandemic was kind of my transition back into all things creative. And I was like, okay, I have always had program manager experience. Jamie over here has been in theater. Amani's been in film. Jamie with her theater experience is very like hands-on on set, and Imani knew all of the like industry stuff about film. And I was like, all three of us combined is like kind of a powerhouse, isn't it? And so I pitched it to them and we were like, maybe, yeah, it's cool. Like, that'd be cool. And then here we are, like, not even 5 years later, doing the thing.
I
Yeah.
love that. Oh, Amani, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna jump in of like it really was this perfect timing too, where we were all like exploring things and finding out more about what we wanted to do full time, like after college and such, and kind of like settling into these roles that felt like that we were drawn to. So it was kind of like perfect timing as well of like, oh, we all kind of like complement each other in terms of like what we want to work on. Um, so there was that aspect too.
Yeah, and I think then, other folks were seeing the same thing and people started just coming to us and we sort of like fell into it backwards. Like we didn't set up the business first, we just started producing and now have to go backwards a little bit.
What's the name? Where does the name come from? Room 19 Productions. Does that have any deeper meaning, or what's that from?
Well, I think the room part is like Julia mentioned, we were doing Hotel Collective as sort of the initial seed of this group of artists that continually collaborate together. And so for us, like room is a room in the hotel. And a hotel is a place that people sort of gather and break apart and gather and break apart. And that's sort of the spirit of that group. So, and then 19, if someone else wants to jump in.
There was like a couple of things like coming from that number in particular that we were drawn to, specifically the 19th Amendment and how we are like a production company that's focused on femmes and women behind the camera as well as in front of the camera, and those stories that center women in their experience. And so the 19th Amendment, that being the amendment that gave women the right to vote, was significant
In 1919.
in 1919. And there was another one.
And then it was COVID-19, which
And there, yes.
so
That's
were
like
like
our hidden facts. Like we're trying to stop telling people about that, but it is a big part of why we first thought of the number
yeah,
19.
yeah.
So you're trying to take back the number 19.
Yes,
Yes.
reclaiming 19.
You can't have it, COVID. It's ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so let me ask you this then. As a production company, of women kind of focused on women in this art, I don't know a ton about the industry, but my impression is that it's pretty male dominated. So how have you navigated that mission of yours, that being women in this field? Like what struggles have you had? How have you navigated that? Where have you found the opportunity to be in the room, both in terms of making your own room and, others' rooms, I guess is kind of my question.
Yeah, it's really tough. It is very male dominated. Um, I wish I knew the stats by heart right now, but the percentages of the top films of the year, they'll look at the top 100, 250 that gross at the box office kind of year by year and examine how many were directed by women, how many were directed by women, and it's just like it's so below 50%. It's not even funny. Um, and so just the parity between directors and then even other roles behind the camera, like cinematographers, um, editors, just like all kinds of roles are also just not balanced or equitable in
Mhm.
terms of the representation there, and it gets worse for women of color. So it's definitely a hard niche to carve out, but we're super determined for it. And there's so many organizations too doing the work behind the scenes as well of like uplifting and empowering women to direct, to edit, to be a DP, all those kinds of things. And we wanted to add to that, and we want to like kind of build that bigger circle as well.
Yeah, I think we were really fortunate that I think Imani had been connected with an organization in Chicago pretty early on called Mescla Media Collective. Shout out to Mescla. But they're an organization for women of color in film. And I think for me, when I moved back to Chicago from Austin, I jumped right into that community with Imani. And I began to grow my network within that organization. And because of that, and I think also because of Imani's connections and the connections Jamie has also had, a lot of the people that we just knew in film were women or non-binary folk. And so starting there and knowing intentionally that that's where we wanted to start, I think was helpful in helping us not quite, avoid those challenges, but definitely have more loopholes around them compared to other people in the industry because we are so intentional about finding those folks. And yeah, I think that's a big part of it is keeping that mission close to heart and knowing that in every decision we're making and every um event we decide to go to, even to like meet more people, is centered around women and non-binary folks.
That's great. Thank you for that. I want to talk about your filmmaking process. And you've all been in film in some fashion for a number of years. And what do you think is your biggest change in terms of how you approach film from when you started to where you are now? Like, how have you seen yourself grow and change in this art form?
I'll start because I have been thinking about this recently. And
Mhm.
as a program manager and as someone who is extremely type A, film is definitely something hard to start with. I think I've realized, nothing, a lot in life doesn't go in according to plan, but in film, really nothing goes according to plan. So the best way to prepare to be in the industry is just like learning how to go with the flow. And so I think from when I first started, I definitely came in with like control, wanting to like have everyone on the same page at all times. But really in film, it just doesn't work that way. Like everyone is trying to catch pieces of things that are just being thrown at them. And so I think now I have learned to go with the flow and also while still holding my own integrity and quality, meet other people's energy and where they're at too. Because if I'm trying to produce from maybe a $50,000 budget, but people are really at a $10,000 budget, I have to meet them where they're at and I need to adjust. So that's one of the big things that I've switched and learned throughout my time in film.
Great.
Yeah, I think I was thinking something sort of similar. I mean, I feel like, yeah, the coming in at first, I like was very prescriptive with my storyboards. So it was about like relinquishing that control over it for me because I do like creating a really collaborative like energy in the room, and I sort of wasn't allowing myself to do that, even though that's the best way I work, by like directing it and producing it and writing the script. So I realized like I don't want to be the screenwriter for the project I'm directing because then I have like it's too much of me in the creative process already. So I think that was something I definitely have kind of gone away from since then and have chosen to either like devise films with folks who are in the room with me or like use other people's words.
That's cool. I would say I have like a little tidbits of dittoing on Julia and Jamie, but also I feel like I've learned a lot about the industry being in Los Angeles and just like what kind of like the holes are in the market. I have felt myself being really drawn to genre, high concept kind of things, especially like in my own style and also like what I like to see. There's especially when there's women protagonists. So that's been really fun to kind of like dive into. It's like my own interest and how that's shaped. Where I feel like when I first started off learning about screenwriting and such, open to a wide variety of things, and then just slowly found myself kind of niching down into, oh yeah, I really like this filmmaker, these kinds of movies. But like also what if we had more women leads in these kinds of things where you don't really see that in like sci-fi or an action or thriller and stuff. Um, and so that has been cool too. And that's been like something that I see a need for in terms of like what's being made today and what are those gaps.
That's great. Do you have, could you share a story, right, a specific story, a film you were working on where either something went wrong and you're like, oh man, I learned a lot from this failure, um, or something went right and you're like, wow, this is something that, this, I want to do that again, right? I want to kind of recapture that. So just what's a story from an experience that you've had and a lesson you've learned from that?
Mm, there's so many. There's big things and there's small things too. I think something that has come out in some of the like maybe indie lower budget kind of things is like patience can be really valuable at times, or like I'll get impatient with things of like, oh, when is this gonna premiere? When is this gonna be done? Or when do we have this? And maybe sometimes like rushing into things, but just the struggles of like indie lower budget kind of things, it's like sometimes it's worth it to like wait for more money or like strategize a little bit more, because when you're on set and it's like, oh, we're out of this for like crafty we're out of these snacks, we can't buy any more because we're already tapped on the budget. Like, oh, I wish we would have saved like raise a little bit more money or done this. And so that patience can just like save problems in the long run. So um over budgeting a little bit. It's
Yeah,
like,
but
hey,
yeah, it's
this is what it is, and need some
those
grace.
band-aid fixes can really like cost you money. And yeah, sometimes just figuring out, okay, a free workaround. Can we ask for a favor? Can we just switch up the crafty strategy? It doesn't have to be like how it was from day one of set.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think patience is a big one. I think for me personally, there was a short film that I'm still working on, where there was a deadline and there was a producer before me and they decided to leave. And I was associate producer at the time, and I decided, okay, I guess I'll be producer. And um I think patience really got me through that whole production slash is still getting me through this production. Again, meeting people where they're at rather than like forcing them into my own timeline. Because in the end, it's their story, it's what they wanted to make. So if they're not in a rush, I shouldn't be in a rush. Not all the time, but in some cases. And so this is one of those cases. But also I think it's been a lesson to me also of, not it's a shared collaborative thing. Not everything is mine on my schedule, and that's okay. And nobody needs it to be on my schedule, and that's fine. Just like everyone is in a different timeline in their lives, that's kind of how it is with film. Like every film is on their own timeline, and it works out in the end for each one.
It's interesting. Like I've not done film until I started working with Jamie and we were doing film, so I've learned a ton from her. And one of the things I'm hearing you all talk about right now as well is just you keep leaning into the collaboration, right? And that it's everybody's coming together. And I know that in theater and in film, it hasn't, I haven't always thought of it in that way. So it's just, I appreciate you all harping on that same idea that no, this is a collaborative art form, and just kind of how we approach it. In
And I
addition,
think honestly, like, sorry to,
no,
but
go ahead.
I think it is our background in theater. I feel like that we have that mentality, and like that's part of when we're talking about like structural change in the industry, like, and getting more women behind the screen, on screen, like the the community building aspect part of that is super important. And I think it was our background in theater and being in Warren's drama club, like that was where we kind of started developing like these skills, like has really allowed us to like approach film from that outsider perspective, and not the same as folks who sort of went to a production heavy like film school, who like sometimes do approach it in a more individualistic way, I think.
Yeah, I've been told several times that in Chicago too, that there is a little bit more of a collaborative sense compared to LA. I've been told that by like Imani, by other folks as well. But like when you when you think about it, I feel like Chicago has always had that spirit, which is really cool. And not to say that one's better than the other, but I think again, as Jamie said, like as people who grew up in theater, it's nice to know that there is a place in the industry that does look at it this way as well.
And we're only at the beginning of like getting to learn from each other, like film as an art form compared to theater. Like we're talking thousands of years in difference. So like I think we're just seeing the beginning of like how these two mediums can like inform each other.
I want to I want to spin off of something that Jamie said. Jamie, you said being in Warren Theater helped teach you about, collaboration and working together. Are there other skills or things that you remember, the three of you remember from Warren, theater or otherwise, that you kind of go, yes, I'm still applying this lesson today. We're still using this, as we're making films or as we're doing whatever in our lives.
Ooh, I mean, the first thing that popped into my head was like the concept of an ensemble, and that we did everything at Warren, of like we're building the sets, we're doing this. Um, Everyone is doing everything from like the lead to people who are running front of house. It was like all hands on deck kind of situation, and that to go off of what Jamie said as well, of something of that should be applied more in film because it is such a collaborative art form. And I feel like sometimes the auteur, the director who so and so like runs everything, it just isn't true. It is an ensemble. And so having like this even playing field kind of mentality that you're going into things with, where there's no ego, no hierarchy, no anything, of like everyone is a valuable piece of this process. That has been something that was in theater that I learned, which I try and carry as much as possible into an industry that sometimes butts against that.
Yeah, I agree fully. I'd also like to add that I think too, like something about for me in my experience at Warren was I had so much fun. I just had fun. And I am lucky enough to be doing this with two of my best friends who I was close with in high school, where remembering to have fun isn't hard because I think we've been doing that our entire friendships. But I think that's what I took away from drama club was these relationships. Like, yeah, you see me, Imani, and Jamie here, but we still like talk to a lot of our theater friends, which I'm so like grateful for. And in every conversation I have with these people, like, yes, we talk about serious things, but we always have like a spirit of humor and playfulness. And um, I feel like me and another creative were talking about this today about how um, that playfulness can open up some vulnerability in a way that people don't realize and creates a deeper connection. So I think that's something that I'm very grateful that drama club at Warren specifically taught me. And I don't think a lot of like I don't think that's universal to maybe people's like high school theater experiences. So I'm like super grateful that was mine.
Awesome. I think spinning off of that, we're showing this to a room full of high school students, to filmmakers, to creatives. What, if this is a career path they want to pursue, what should they do? What sort of skills should they be looking at? What sort of steps do you recommend that they take?
Ooh, it's a crazy time in the industry right now. Not to get like too technical on like the business side of things, but definitely pay attention to the trades. So um there's different articles like IndieWire, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, things you can just like start educating yourselves on, where you just like pick a random article, and then you could do this like once a week. You pick a random article and just like read it and just like pick out the terms like you don't understand, of like agent to the manager and the CAA and the different terms and stuff, and then just like you can just like research those and look those up just so you're like um thinking about all the different topics and terms, because I think that is like a big part of getting the film, is just that barrier of like knowledge, and people try to gatekeep knowledge, and it'll be like well, like a lot of companies saying that like knowledge is everything in the industry and such. So taking time to like educate yourself on like those different terms that people and lingo that people can use can help a lot in the long run. And things are always changing, of course, but there are some things that stay the same. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just like staying up to date and staying educated on like the terms of the business and such.
Yeah, and I think we've showed some videos in short film, but there's obviously, we've said before, like there's a whole wealth of knowledge. Not even just the industry stuff, like kind of bigger business stuff, but even just like the tiny little terms of like what's a stinger, what are these little film terms? It's an extension cord, by the way. Like I didn't know that.
Thank you.
And I was
I didn't know
on
what that
set.
was, so I'm glad you
Yeah, it's
told me. I
like
had no idea.
just like a regular cord, but like, and I was like, okay, we don't do that in theater. Like, we just call them extension cords. But like that sort of thing can really stress you out on set if you like hear it and you don't know how to respond. So I think, finding that wealth of knowledge, like Imani said, there's tons of stuff on YouTube too, and all sorts of like film folks, camera folks, directors, producers talking about stuff. So
Yeah, and I think the advice I would give is in high school, I didn't know I wanted to be in film. So I think it's keeping your mind open and knowing that like if you know, then great. I say like really dive into it and like Imani said, keep up with the trades. Like Jamie said, like watch the YouTube videos. Like if you commit to it now, oh, you're gonna be like fast to the top. And I think Imani, like you're an example of that. You knew in high school that you wanted to be in film, and now you're in LA doing the thing, and that's awesome. I didn't know that's what I wanted to do, but I'm grateful that I have found my way to it because, again, like I love theater. I love being creative, and I love being able to be in that space. So just continue to follow your passions and listen to what you want to do, and just remember that like things change and that's okay, and you'll adjust, you'll make it through. And I think that's like the growth mindset is like my favorite thing to remember.
I love that. I think that's all great advice. Learn as much as you can, right, about the industry, about the specifics, and know that wherever your path takes you, if you're working hard and if you're being curious, you're gonna find success. So,
yeah, and I think just, giving yourself that permission to like be an artist, like I think that's such a big hump for a lot of people to go get over. So like just like giving yourself that permission and then like doing it with a phone, with a tiny little camcorder, with anything you can, just start shooting some stuff and finding what you like.
that's awesome. Thank you, Julia, Imani, Jamie, for taking the time to have a little talk. Um, Room 19 Productions, what's the website where they can check you out?
Yeah.
It's room19productions.com.
Oh, that was super
Mhm.
easy. Is it just
RM.
RM?
Mhm.
Yeah,
RM19productions.com.
RM19, yeah.
And
And right
then
now, actually, we'd probably push you to go to our social media. We're doing a little bit of a rebranding, so Instagram is actually probably the better place to catch us right now.
Yeah.
check them out on Insta. That's what all the kids are saying. That's where they're going to do. We're gonna
Mm-hmm.
get so many more followers after we show this. So, thank you all so much. I enjoy following what you all are doing, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having us.
you.
Mm.
Thanks.